Hey everyone, this is David with Android Police, and we're here in Barcelona at MWC 2017. And as you may be able to tell, on my wrist here is the all-new Huawei Watch 2. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, but first, a shout out to Dbrand. Thanks for sponsoring our coverage here at MWC. If you want some sweet skins for your devices, we've got a link to Dbrand down in the description of this video. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the Huawei Watch 2. Now, the original Huawei Watch was, in all honesty, probably one of the most well-liked Android Wear devices ever released. This new version then had a lot to live up to. Now the version I'm wearing here is what you would call the sportier version of the new Huawei Watch 2. There's actually two versions. So you've got the Huawei Watch 2, which is what this is. There are LTE and non-LTE versions of that. And then there's the Huawei Watch Classic. Now the difference is the Huawei Watch Classic has a more smoothed over bezel. It has a full stainless body, and then it has 22mm straps versus these strange sporty 20mm straps that I'll show you in our hands-on here a little bit about as we progress. Now, the sport version of the watch that I'm wearing in this black color, honestly, I think it's pretty ugly. It is not a good-looking watch, and I have spoken to no one here who's looked at it that had anything really nice to say about the aesthetics. It is almost in every way a visual step backward from the first Huawei watch, which was a pretty striking device in a similar vein as the Moto 360. What is good about it? Well, I mean, this LTE version has LTE, if that's something you want in a watch. It has Android Pay, so it has an NFC coil, obviously. Unlike the Watch Sport also, the antennas are not built into the bands of the watch. They're built into this bezel area and the body of the watch, so you can swap the bands. But on the Sport version, I'll tell you that's probably a little trickier than you might think, at least in terms of pulling it off in a way that looks good. Now, the display you have here is 1.2 inches across, which is a good 0.2 of an inch smaller than the outgoing Huawei watch, and that just doesn't make sense to me. This watch is, as you can see, very thick, around 12.6 millimeters, and yet the display is absolutely tiny. Not to mention, you've got this big, tall bezel up here, so that whenever you're working at the edge of the screen, you're hitting this bezel, and it's just, it doesn't feel nice, it doesn't feel natural. It just feels like an older, chunkier Android Wear watch like the G Watch R, but honestly, a little worse than that even in some ways. I just don't know if this is the right way for Huawei to go. Now let me take off the watch here and show you a little bit about the actual hardware. As you can see, you've got this rubber silicone strap. This strap feels very cheap to me. It's not nice. If they offered a more premium option, maybe something with metal links, or at least a nicer silicone strap, I would probably go for that. This strap doesn't do anything for me. It's just not very good. The hardware of the watch, you can see you've got two buttons here. This secondary button, I'm not even really clear on what it does at this point, or what it does that's useful. You're able to set some stats in the Huawei Fitness app with it right now, essentially, but other than that, I haven't found anything too interesting that it does. You've got the shoulder power button up here, obviously, for your main mode of interaction. Neither of these are rotating buttons, obviously, so you don't get Android Wear's new rotating crown features, which is kind of a bummer. On the back, you've got the heart rate sensor, the PPG and the IR and such. You've got pogo pins for charging, so the Huawei Watch 2 does not feature wireless charging. Although the cradle is improved from the original Huawei watch, I'll say that. It's got little ridges on it to make sure the watch is centered when you put it on. And as you can see, the bands are replaceable. Now, as you can tell, I'm having to pull them apart here to show you that because they're fairly stiff up near where they meet the lug of the watch. And I'll just pull one off here for you. And you can see they pop out pretty easily. But as you can also see, there's this lug insert. So if you wanted to replace these, you could, but you'd probably want a band that had the same shape of insert to make sure that it, looked right when you put it in. The next thing I'll show you here is you can take out the SIM slot. Putting a SIM in this thing is very easy. You just take out that slot there and then put it right back in. Well, it's very easy compared to at least the Watch Sport. And on this version we have here, actually, if you can really see that in the video, it says Meow Meow 3, which is kind of funny. Huawei's doing this for prototype tracking. These are prototype versions of the watch, we should note. So the hardware is design-wise final, but fit and finish-wise probably not necessarily 100% of the way there yet. The software also is definitely not final, and it has been buggy for me, but I would say that's probably something that's going to be fixed by the time the watches go to retail. So that about wraps up my thoughts on the new version of the Huawei watch. And I know they aren't positive. I just don't think Huawei did what they should have done with this new smartwatch here. I think that what made the Huawei Watch, the original one, so well loved just wasn't replicated here. It seems like they stepped away from a lot of what made the original Huawei Watch so nice. I haven't tried the new classic version. I will say the classic version is the same thickness, same screen size. It just features a slightly redesigned bezel and a different strap design. So it really doesn't fix a lot of the critical flaws with this watch. I'm just not sure what Huawei was thinking with it. But anyway, those are our first thoughts on the Huawei Watch 2.